Teachers at Reddit, what is your best read the note to the class story? Not a teacher. Someone in my class had a cold and wiped their snot into a scrap piece of paper. As they didn't have a tissue, they then scrunched it up and left it on the side of their desk. Teacher saw this, thought it was a note and grabbed the paper, going through the usual fanfare of the importance not passing notes around. The look on her face when she opened it was priceless. I don't know if this is the best, but it's pretty profound. I usually ignored note passing. If a student didn't want to pay attention but wasn't bothering anyone else, I was cool. In the age of cell phones, notes were kind of outdated anyway. So I had this student who could do origami like a boss, and he was always making all kinds of animal figures and cool shapes that I would put on the corkboard behind my desk. This one day he is getting his fold on and is completely focused and not paying attention. Before I know it, class is over and it's on my desk. He stops on the way out of my class and says, "You're gonna wanna read that." I read it and he asking for lunch money cause his mom took off and he was hungry. It hurts being a teacher some days. I was in 8th grade and it was a hot, sunny day in mid-May. I wrote "it's snowing" on a piece of paper and showed it to my friend sitting next to me, who immediately looked out the window. We both laughed because obviously it wasn't snowing. Then he and I laughed when I showed it to another student and they immediately looked out the window. And so on until most of the class is in on the joke and watching as I show the piece of paper to the next unwitting fool. Almost every student knows what's going on. When my teacher sees that I'm showing this piece of paper to everyone and making them laugh, she walks over to my desk, looks down at the piece of paper that says "it's snowing" and instinctively looks out the window. The entire class bursts out in laughter. Not a teacher. But once I wrote a love letter to a guy when I was 9 years old. When I got caught, the guy took the blame and read it to the whole class. He never said who wrote it. Thank you, Devin. Not really a note. But when I was teaching college classes, I caught 2 of the girls whispering. So I told them, if you're going to tell secrets, you need to share with the rest of the class. I taught preschool before this. She looked right at me and said, without the slightest embarrassment, "I was just telling her that I think you have a cute butt." I was teaching a communications class, and we were discussing communications in the workplace. And I looked down at the textbook. After seeing what the next section was, I said okay. Moving on to the next section, titled "Sexual Harassment." Everyone roared with laughter. A couple weeks later, at a baseball game paid for by the school, she came on to me really hard, with my fiancé right there. I am not a teacher, but I have a story which was kind of the opposite. When I was in college, I was in a large math lecture hall 2 times a week, and me and my friends took to making paper planes and throwing them down from the back of the theater. We did it often and I am sure we thought we were hilarious. Somehow nobody said a word except for the occasional snicker, and it went on like that, on and off for the semester. Then, on the last day, I remember writing "Happy Christmas, Dr. Jones" on a plane and throwing it down. Seeing it land in front of the lecturer, he blew a fuse and started shouting about how this had been going on all semester and he thought it was a disgrace. Then he picked up the plane and read the message, got very embarrassed and meekly said "thank you." I still cringe to think of my childish actions. Another non-teacher here. But my 7th grade teacher typically always wore a dress shirt to class and looked very presentable, but this day he had his sleeves rolled up. Now, everyone loved this teacher, but my immediate thought was to write a note to my friend sitting beside me that his arms were super hairy. And that note was passed back and forth with us cracking jokes about it. Nothing malicious or overly mean. Just that we didn't think he'd have such hairy arms. We eventually got caught, and between classes he took us aside and warned us to not pass notes. And since this was the first time this happened, he would toss it out without reading it and let us go. Well, a couple months go by and he decides to wear short sleeves again, and his arms were noticeably less hairy. I know 12-year-olds don't have the greatest moral compass, but to this day I still feel so bad that my dumbest little note might have made him so self-conscious about something so unimportant. I'm sorry, Emma. Fifield. Wherever you are now. In health class, we were talking about boners and how they fill up with blood. My cousin took a piece of paper and wrote "Your penis is filled with blood" and threw it at some popular kid. The teacher picked it up and you can see him die inside because of the immaturity of 8th graders and how he has to teach them for a career. 8th graders. Talking about reproduction in class. Semen comes up. The note passed said, "Isn't the proper science term cum?" Not a note, but an anonymous question to the class in health class in freshman year of high school. We had to anonymously write questions about sexuality and the reproductive process, and the teacher would pull out a random card, read the question, and respond with a textbook answer. Said teacher was very religious and very open about her faith in a way that almost seemed patronizing. So I was surprised when she pulled out and read a card that said, "What does the word CNT mean?" She looked at the card, looked at us all calm, and then proceeded to pull up Wikipedia and other web media to inform us of the origin of the word, its connotation, and how it's used differently around the world. I was kind of shocked that she just wanted us to know what it meant. As if to say, don't look like a dumb FCK if you want to use this word in a sentence. Edit. Sentence blame autocorrect. Not me. THKS. A positive spin. I was long-term subbing a class. One day I noticed students discreetly passing around a piece of paper while I was teaching. I went to retrieve it and discovered it was a petition signed by each student requesting I remain their teacher for the rest of the year. Not a teacher, but there was one teacher who was really cool. Bust still took his teacher job seriously. One lesson, there is a note being passed around. Because of the giggling, he sharpened his senses and honed in on the note's location and intercepted the handoff. Did that getting ready for a speech cough. Opened the note and laughed. The note said, "Giggle and pass it on." There was another time he intercepted a note that said, "Happy birthday, Emma." Not me, but a friend of mine who taught 7th grade. He found a note and was about to read it to the class, but when he opened it, the note read, "I want you to crack an egg in my ass and FCK me so hard it scrambles." He immediately put it in his locked desk drawer without reading it out loud. And it's now laminated and hung up on his fridge at home. Probably late. But in 8th grade the teacher took the note and made me read it. I didn't even think to make something up. So I blurted out what was on it. We beat the meats. A story of 3 male prostitutes who made it the hard way, parody of We Beat the Streets. Thought I was so clever. Not a teacher. But when I was in high school, I started a note from the back row of the class, which was passed and read by nearly everyone in the class. The teacher grabbed it as it went past him. When there was only 3 people left who hasn't read it, I think he was going to read it out to the class. But he looked at it before he read it. All the note said was that the zip on his pants was down. With all respect to him, he calmly zipped up and continued teaching. One time a student had passed a note and I asked it to be read out. Read. Bish to take KKN. Bastards had been playing a game of F-King correspondence chess during my lesson. I let them carry on. In high school, a girl in class passed a note to another girl, asking if she had a pad or tampon. Teacher completely blew up, started yelling at them, and asked them to read it out loud. They did. And the teacher, who was an older man, immediately calmed down and let it go. I think he was more embarrassed than the girls. My then fiancée was a high school math teacher. One day she thought she saw a note being passed, but she wasn't sure. So she waited. Then she thought she saw it again. Finally she saw it, walked over, and took it. It was a wedding card, signed by half of the class before she took it. She cried. Edit. Yes. She's now my wife. Student. Not a teacher. In my college thermodynamics class, the professor said that he didn't care if we got a text message in class. However, he did care if we had our ringers on. So his rule was that if you got a text message and your phone went off loud enough for the whole room to hear it, you had two options. You could either read the text out loud to the whole class, or you could bring in donuts for everyone at the next class. There were about 20 of us. Of course, everyone keeps their phones on silent, so it never happens until smack dab in the middle of one of the exams, when the professor's phone gets a text message and rings out loud and clear in the middle of the exam. Professor freezes, takes one look at his phone as we all start giggling, and says, "Guess I'm bringing you guys all donuts on Wednesday." They were delicious. You all know those sub-teachers who pass around the attendance form instead of doing it themselves? I had one that did that. Then saw the girl behind me pass it to me and assumed it was a note. Read it out to the class. Aaron Aardvark, Betty Boop, etc. Obviously fake names. Didn't believe me at first. Back in my substitute teaching days, just out of college, I was subbing for junior high science teacher. I thought the day had been going relatively smoothly, but during a break, I noticed a note on the floor. I picked it up and read it, and it said, "Mr. Palquito is a asshole. Keep quiet. Keep your head down. Stay calm." To this day, I appreciate the implication that, to that set of kids, I was like the junior high version of the warden from Shawshank Redemption. Not a teacher, but something one of my teachers told me outside of school. The students were learning about properties of rocks and minerals. The first student wrote "What's cleavage?" on a note, referencing the mineral property. The second student responded with a human anatomy description. 7th grade biology. My teacher was going over genetics and the girl I was sitting by was not the brightest bulb, nor was she paying attention. My teacher asks her where she gets her genes from, and the girl replies, "J.C. Penney." Student not a teacher. In maybe the 4th or 5th grade, a kid is trying to pass me a note and is caught by the teacher. I wasn't paying attention to where it came from. I only noticed when it was about to be handed to me. She makes him read the note in front of the class. He reads the note and it says, "You wanna be my boyfriend? I like the way your booty moves when you walk." I overreact and say I'm not gay. And the boy says I didn't write that, it came from Tasha. Everyone laughs and she and I are both extremely embarrassed. After class I go to talk to her at the locker and she says, "Yeah, I wrote it, but I don't like you like that anymore." Legend as if I'm still single to this day. Edit. My embarrassment has turned to gold. My favorite wholesome note will always be, "Shut up Josh, you did not hook up with Maddie last night. You are gayer than MR. Dinossaur Galakim. We all support and love your gay bitch ass." I did not read the note aloud. I just put it down and said, "Watch your language." A few years ago before college, I used to be in a class where people would pass blank notes and try and get caught by the teacher. They knew the teacher could do nothing about it. And we were still pretty immature, so we thought it was funny when she found the notes. As time moved on, people began passing notes with drawings. I remember one person passed a note to me that had a drawing of Thomas the Tank Engine with wings and a halo. Needless to say, she hated our class. I'm 6th grade. Not a teacher. The teacher read aloud a note these two kids were passing back and forth. Had a student give a presentation on a historical math figure. Asked if he could use his phone for notes. Literally read the Wikipedia page to the class. Not a teacher, but had a note passed to me. Me and my best friend were corresponding and she had asked me in the first note if I wanted to stay at her house. I responded back no, because I wanted to go play at Wesley's house. Her response I never got to read and she never admitted till 10 years later because the teacher asked for our note we were passing back and forth. She was made to go to principal's office and was out of school for the rest of the week. Every time I brought up, she never told me and would change the subject. Finally, after a couple of blunts, she tells me, Because I preferred to go to a boy's house instead of hers. She said she hoped I sucked his dick and choked. We were in 3rd grade. My sister-in-law was in 7th grade and was passing notes with a friend. The particular note she was writing one day explicitly called the teacher an asshole. When she was caught with the note, instead of reading it out loud, she ran to the restroom and flushed it down the toilet. This story is frequently shared at family get-togethers. Me and a friend in high school used to pass notes back and forth writing song lyrics as we went. This day we were doing the lyrics to David Bowie's Labyrinth Magic song and I had to stand up and read it. The teacher got even angrier because she didn't believe that was on the note, so she stormed up and snatched the note from my hand. When she realized the note indeed did remind her of the babe, she cracked up laughing before asking us to stop. I once passed a note in algebra class telling a friend about a hot dream I had about another kid in the class. Teacher took the note and read it out loud. The guy and I were mortified and the class then started discussing it. We had another class together immediately following that one. I'll always remember that teacher as a monster and I never stopped passing notes. I'm the student in the story, not the teacher. Yeah, I know, but my current students all text or message on their laptops rather than passing physical notes. In 7th grade science class, my friend and I passed notes to each other through the guys sitting between us. Our teacher caught one of the boys with the note but knew it wasn't him because it had enough doodles of hearts flowers on it. She opened it up to read to the class to catch whoever did write it. However, the note was written completely in Tolkien's Elvish alphabet and she couldn't read a word. Most of the class knew that it had to be me and my friend cause we're the only LOTR nerds in the class obsessed enough to teach ourselves the Elvish alphabet. But thankfully no one ratted us out. We were hoping that writing notes in Elvish would keep the boys from reading about my friend's massive crush on one of them. But it ended up also saving us from getting in trouble. As a teacher, I would have taken that tea home and cracked it overnight. Full blown string bulletin board and everything. Not a teacher, but my sister got caught passing a note and was forced to read it in front of the class. The note read, "Teacher, S flies down." How do I tell her? Helped my buddy and professor out one time a few years ago. The professor had warned the students to not leave their ringers on in class, or else he would throw the phone out of the window. Everyone assumes he is not serious. My friend was getting rid of his cell phone and offered it up as a sacrifice. I called my friend at a scheduled time. My friend said hello and then the professor walked over, grabbed the phone and threw it out of the room. I'd gotten into some beef with one of the really cool girls who was also sort of my friend, so I slipped her a note in science to apologize. Tell her I didn't mean to offend her. That sort of thing. Teacher grabbed it and started to read it. After the first sentence, he started making shit up. I was in middle school and he started saying that I'd written "Isn't Billy Sue cute? I think he's the best. I hope he likes me. Do you think he likes me? I love his eyes," and on and on. Billy was the most popular and attractive guy in school at the time. Completely ruined my social standing. In 7th grade science, I wrote a note to a friend with an apple depicted as a ninja. It read, "I hope M's Gray gets killed by a green ninja apple." Read it out loud. Class laughed. Science teacher went to the math teaching, M's Gray, and they were scolding me about how wrong it was. And the math teacher threatened to press charges over the posted note. She was a bitch who said on her first day of school, "I can't wait to retire." Had a co-worker, also a teacher, see a pair of girls hunched over in class and giggling. She walks over to them and sees them doodling. She takes it from them and looks at it. They're beet red and shocked. Teacher holds the paper and then says to the class, "What in the world? I can't believe this. Girls, this is not okay." The girls are stammering and more red. The teacher marches to the front of the room, towards her camera projector. Continues. "Can you believe it, class? Can you believe what the girls were drawing?" The class is on the edge of their seats and the girls are almost crying. Like, no. Don't project it. PLZ. She marches mercilessly closer. She slaps it on the overhead projector. There it is. A giant penis. Balls and everything. For all the 8th graders to see. Before anyone can react, she says, "Now who would dare doodle rocket ships in my class?" Class stunned. Girls stunned. Don't know what to say. She knows what she did.